When Tiger Woods sat down for a live interview on national television, no one expected fireworks. After all, the golf legend was known for precision, not controversy. But that's when a smug TV host made the biggest mistake of his career, trying to corner and humiliate a man who'd faced pressure most of us couldn't imagine. What he didn't realize was that Tiger wasn't just there to answer questions. He was there to set the record straight. And what happened next became a viral masterclass in grace, control, and quiet strength that left America in absolute silence. The lights dimmed, and a sleek graphic flickered across millions of TV screens. Live, the Langston Hour, one night only with Tiger Woods. Inside Studio 9B of the Global News Network, cameras panned across a buzzing audience. Behind the desk, Derek Langston, the sharp-jawed anchor with a reputation for ruthless interviews, adjusted his earpiece and smoothed his tailored suit. His smile was polished, but his eyes hinted at something more, something calculated. Tonight wasn't about golf. Across from him sat Tiger Woods, calm and collected in a charcoal blazer, no tie, posture perfect. The world hadn't seen him in a sit-down interview in over a year. Since his comeback win, he'd kept to the course, away from the headlines. But tonight he was here, and so was the pressure. In living rooms, bars, and break rooms across the country, people leaned in. Twitter trended with hashtags like #TigerReturns and Langston vs. Woods. Some tuned in for inspiration, others for spectacle, but everyone expected something to happen. The opening credits faded. A single camera zoomed in. Langston leaned forward, smile smooth as silk. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we welcome a man who changed the game, on and off the green." Tiger nodded politely, his hands folded, eyes steady. Langston paused, letting the silence build. "And tonight, we find out if the legend still stands." The music faded. The room held its breath. It had begun. Before we dive back into the story, I've got a quick favor to ask. I'm working toward a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and every single one counts. It would mean the world if you'd hit that subscribe button. All right, back to the story. For the first few minutes, Langston played nice. He asked about Tiger's kids, his swing, his health, surface-level pleasantries, the kind that lull a guest into comfort. But then came the shift. "So, Tiger," Langston began, flipping casually through his notes, "some say your greatest win wasn't on the course, but recovering from, let's say, a complicated chapter in your life." He smiled like a man dropping poison in a glass of wine. "What do you say to critics who call your comeback manufactured?" Tiger didn't flinch. He didn't blink. "I say comebacks don't come from PR teams. They come from hitting balls at 5 a.m. when no one's watching." Langston smirked. "Sure, but let's be honest. The name Tiger Woods doesn't carry the same weight it used to. Golf's moved on. Younger players, new stories. Do you ever wonder if your time has passed?" The crowd stiffened. A few camera operators exchanged glances. They knew this dance well. Langston was warming up. Tiger tilted his head slightly. "I've never measured my time by headlines," he said quietly. "Only by how I play and who I inspire." Langston pounced. "But can you still inspire, after everything?" The air cooled. Even the audience felt it. Tiger sat up straighter. His voice didn't rise, but something in the room did. "That's the thing about legacy," he said. "You don't build it for the critics. You build it for the people watching at home who know what it's like to fall and get back up." Langston blinked. The game was still young, but the tone had changed. Tiger wasn't here for redemption. He was here for something else, and Langston had no idea what was coming next. Langston leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other like a man settling in to watch his own trap spring shut. He tapped his pen against the desk, slowly, rhythmically, then dropped it with theatrical flair. "Tiger," he said, his voice taking on that signature blend of faux sympathy and steel. "There was a time when kids across America wore your cap, swung your clubs, mimicked your every move." Tiger watched him, silent. Langston smiled, wide, and rehearsed. "But after everything that's happened, the scandals, the injuries, the headlines, do you think—" He paused, letting the silence lean in with him. "You're still a role model? Or just a cautionary tale?" There it was. A slow, sharp intake of breath echoed from somewhere in the studio audience. A few jaws dropped. Even a production assistant behind camera 3 looked up from her monitor. The silence wasn't just uncomfortable, it was electric. Langston sat perfectly still, waiting, knowing. This was the moment. The headline. The clip. The gotcha that would light up the internet. Tiger blinked once. No visible reaction. The host pushed again softly. Because America remembers, Tiger. The fall was public. The silence? Long. Some wonder if the man they looked up to is still even in there. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of heat. Full of history. Full of weight. And through it all, Tiger just looked at him. Steady. Calm. Langston shifted ever so slightly in his seat. He didn't know it yet, but he'd just made the mistake that would flip this entire interview on its head. Tiger didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned forward, slow and deliberate, and adjusted the tiny microphone clipped to his lapel. Then, with the same unhurried grace he used to line up championship-winning putts, he reached for the glass of water beside him. He took a sip. Not because he needed it, but because he could. Langston's smile twitched, just slightly. The camera zoomed in, tight on Tiger's face. No teleprompters, no cue cards, just him sitting in silence, commanding the room by doing absolutely nothing. The control room went still. Producers watching from backstage leaned forward, and for a moment the noise of the outside world faded. No tweets, no clicks, just one man, one chair, and a storm waiting to break. Tiger set the glass down. He folded his hands, fingers interlaced, resting on his knee. Then, finally, he spoke. "Let me tell you something, Derek," he said, voice low, smooth, but with the force of something buried deep. "I've won tournaments with a torn ACL. I've played with pain most people don't even recognize. And I've rebuilt myself more times than anyone will ever know." He paused again. Not to think, but to let it land. "You want a soundbite. You want a fall from grace headline. But what you don't want is the truth." Langston blinked. The studio lights suddenly felt a little hotter. "Because the truth," Tiger continued, "doesn't make great TV, but it makes great men." The words didn't rise in volume, but they hit like a hammer, quiet, precise, devastating. And in that instant, everyone watching knew. Langston had picked the wrong man to corner. Tiger hadn't come to play defense. He'd come to remind the world exactly who he still was. Tiger leaned back, eyes not on Langston but somewhere farther, somewhere older. "You know," he began, voice low and steady, "when I was 24, I won the US Open by 15 strokes. People called it perfection. I was unstoppable, untouchable." He paused, his gaze returning to Langston. "And then, I wasn't." The audience shifted in their seats, not because he'd said something shocking, but because he hadn't dodged it. He'd walked straight into the fire. "I lost tournaments. I lost endorsements. I lost people," Tiger continued. "And worse, I lost trust. Not just from others, but in myself." He didn't blink, didn't flinch. "But here's the thing," he said. "Falling doesn't define you. Staying down does." A ripple moved through the crowd. An energy shift. You could feel it in the silence. He wasn't talking to Langston anymore. He was talking to them. To us. I had to rebuild from nothing. Not from swing coaches or sponsorships, but from waking up every morning and deciding to try again. To be better. To earn respect back one day at a time. Langston fidgeted with his pen, suddenly unsure where to go. "You call that a cautionary tale?" Tiger asked, eyebrow raised slightly. "I call it a comeback. I call it growth." His tone never rose, his voice never broke, but his words hit harder than any outburst ever could, because it wasn't a performance. It was a truth that didn't need to shout to be heard. Langston leaned forward, clearly preparing his next move, but Tiger wasn't done. "You confuse perfection with value," he said, turning his full attention back to the host. "You think because someone stumbles, they're no longer worth listening to." Langston opened his mouth, but Tiger held up a hand, calm, controlled, but final. "You think headlines tell a man's story," he continued, "but they don't, they just sell ads." There it was, the flip. This wasn't Tiger defending himself. This was Tiger dissecting the narrative piece by piece without ever raising his voice. "I came here thinking we'd talk about golf," he said, glancing around the studio. "Instead, you came to swing." Langston chuckled nervously, trying to regain footing. "Tiger, it's just a question." "No," Tiger interrupted, voice still cool as steel. "It's a setup, a moment dressed as journalism. But I've been in moments before. Bigger ones. Real ones." He leaned in slightly, not to intimidate, but to be heard. "I've stood on the 18th green with the weight of a nation on my shoulders. I've made mistakes with the world watching. And I've looked my children in the eye and told them the truth. That's pressure. That's character." Langston tried again. But don't you think— I think, Tiger said, cutting him off once more, that you came looking for a fall, and what you got instead done is a rise. A single clap echoed from the audience, then another, until applause filled the studio. Langston sat silent, blinking, because in a world addicted to outrage, Tiger Woods had just delivered something rare: grace, and the kind of respect that can't be demanded, only earned. The second the cameras cut, Studio 9B didn't exhale, it gasped. Producers stared at monitors like they'd witnessed a car crash in slow motion. The director ripped off his headset, eyes darting between feeds. Someone spilled coffee. Another whispered, "Did that just happen?" Backstage, Langston's assistant fumbled with cue cards, her fingers trembling. The control room went quiet, not in awe, but in panic. This wasn't the show they'd planned. This wasn't ratings gold. This was a reckoning. Langston stood slowly, face stiff, avoiding eye contact with everyone. His earpiece buzzed with frantic voices. Execs, legal, PR. No one said it out loud, but they all knew. He'd lost control of the room, and worse, the narrative. In the green room, Tiger stood alone, rolling the mic cord into his palm with the same precision he used on a 9-iron. One producer approached, sheepish. "Mr. Woods, that was—" He looked up. "Honest." She nodded. "Yeah, honest." Outside the studio doors, a crowd had formed. Staff, interns, security. Some clapped quietly. Others just watched as Tiger passed by, silent, steady, untouchable. Not because he was famous, because he was right. Langston, meanwhile, stayed seated at the desk long after the lights dimmed, staring at the spot where Tiger had sat. He'd come to deliver a career-making moment. Instead, he'd become a footnote in someone else's rise. The storm he thought he controlled had passed over him and left him in its quiet shadow. The moment the interview ended, the world lit up. Within seconds, clips of Tiger's quiet takedown flooded social media feeds. Twitter exploded with hashtags. #TigerSpeaks, #GraceUnderFire, #LegacyTalk. The interview hadn't even aired in the Pacific time zone yet, but it was already everywhere. One clip in particular, Tiger's calm statement, "You confuse perfection with value," was reposted by veterans, school teachers, athletes, and even a few rival golfers. NBA stars quoted him. A retired Navy SEAL posted, "That's what leadership looks like." Even usually combative sports commentators paused to acknowledge it. Tiger Woods just gave a masterclass on how to take control of a moment without ever breaking a sweat. Headlines followed quickly. Tiger Woods shuts down host with class. NY Morning Journal. A comeback of character, Woods redefines what strength looks like. Chronicle Weekly. No roar needed. Tiger's whisper was louder than Langston's questions. Golf and society. By morning, the interview had racked up over 50 million views across platforms. At high schools, teachers played clips in media literacy classes. At barbershops, old-timers nodded in approval between haircuts. Even late-night comedians praised it, not because it was funny, but because it was true. Langston, once the man with the mic, had been silenced by a single, steady voice. And Tiger? He hadn't fired back. He'd just stood up, and in doing so, reminded America that there's a difference between being loud and being heard. The screen fades to black. A soft instrumental plays beneath a single voice, the narrator we've heard before, but this time the tone is quieter, reflective, earned. In a world where outrage sells and shame entertains, one man reminded us that strength isn't always loud. Cut to a slow-motion clip of Tiger adjusting his mic, staring calmly at Langston. He didn't clap back. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't storm out. Tiger didn't raise his voice. Beat, he raised the bar. Clips roll of Tiger walking off the studio stage, his head held high. No entourage, no PR team scrambling behind him. Just a man who came in prepared, and left having changed the conversation. The video lingers on reactions, real people, real voices. A teacher from Kansas. "My students talked more about this interview than any sports story all year." A father from Detroit. "I showed it to my son, told him, that's what grace under pressure looks like." A retired Marine. "That wasn't an interview. That was a lesson in manhood." Final shot, Tiger in the parking lot, tossing his blazer over his shoulder, walking alone into the night. Not for drama, just to go home. The screen fades to a single sentence. Character still matters. This story was intense, but the one waiting for you on the right? It's even more insane. Click it now. You won't believe what happens next.